As a wealthy second generation, I was blessed with both beauty and wealth. Despite my parents' advice to take life easy, I was determined to prove that I wasn't just a pretty face. After discussing it with my close friends, I decided to open a hot pot restaurant. However, 2 months into the business, I faced a staggering loss of 10 million and had over 100 employees depending on me. Realizing I often backed down when things got tough, I decided to close shop and return home to happily embrace being unproductive. Before closing, I invited my parents for a meal at the restaurant as an acknowledgement of my defeat. Unexpectedly, this move spared us from a zombie apocalypse. When the apocalypse struck, my hot pot restaurant turned into a safe haven for my family of 3. My dad said that as long as I didn't venture into business recklessly, our family wealth was sufficient to support a lavish lifestyle for 3 generations. But having come into this world, I was not content with being a rich second generation recognized only for my looks. To prove that I had some business acumen, I used my 10 years of saved up pocket money to start the hot pot restaurant. After thorough research and analysis, I chose a bomb shelter located halfway up a hill in the city center as the location. This bomb shelter stretched across an entire mountain and was 500 meters long, with one end opening onto a bustling street and the other overlooking a cliff by the river. The renovation alone cost 5 million, but I was determined to turn it into a trendy urban landmark. Sure enough, since its opening, the restaurant was packed daily, with queues from noon lasting till evening. Sometimes, when we were short-staffed, I had to step in and serve tables myself. After 2 months, I could visibly see myself getting rounder, of course. Some sacrifices were necessary for the sake of my career. At this rate, I expected my hot pot restaurant to flourish and generate a significant franchise fee within 6 months. However, just when I was starting to feel proud, the thriving business took a sudden nosedive. The long queues at the restaurant door vanished, and the few remaining customers complained about the overdecorated, expensive, and unappetizing dishes. Negative reviews flooded in relentlessly. A true warrior faces tough times head-on. Together with my best friend and marketing advisor Sarah, we reviewed the situation, nonchalantly picking at her nails. She mentioned, it might be because of the 10,000 free meal vouchers I issued that just expired. What? 10,000 free meal vouchers? I couldn't believe it and had Sarah confirm it again. She nodded calmly. In that moment, my blood pressure soared, and I was too angry to speak. This disastrous decision. Doing business means making sacrifices. You need to think big, she said. I cursed under my breath, regretting letting her handle marketing. It wasn't about the money. I was upset about my rough hands from serving plates. Whimpering, I noted my broken nails several times. How about this? I immediately contact Group X and issue another 10,000 free meal vouchers, guaranteed to bring prosperity and wealth. I asked dispiritedly, the kind of prosperity that rolls away from me. Oh, you don't understand. This is internet thinking, losing money to build a habit. I grabbed a handful of garlic and threw it at Sarah as she let out an exaggerated scream. You and your internet thinking. I'm trying to run a business, not become a saint. Just then, the finance department reminded me that there was no money left to pay the salaries, and today was payday. I ran a large operation with top-notch service, employing over 100 staff each month. The payroll alone was a substantial sum. No, I had run out of money. After the bold claims I had made, asking my family for help was out of the question. The employees looked at me with expectation. I was so overwhelmed that I nearly had a hormonal imbalance. Quick thinking, I grabbed Sarah's phone and transferred 100,000 to finance. It's convenient when best friends use the same password. Sarah was hopping mad. But there was no other choice. Grumblingly took away my prized Himalayan cat. Staring at the empty bank balance and more staff than customers, I slapped my thigh and made a bold decision. Swiftly, I wrote a sign and hung it on the door, business for sale. Even though the store manager repeatedly urged me to persevere, I decisively gave up. Acknowledging a mistake quickly and settling the bill is the posture of the strong. I am suited for water, not a hot pot restaurant. It's not shameful to lose money. Next time, I'll try a different line of business. I comfort myself with these thoughts. All the remaining money after paying salaries was given as severance to the staff. When opening the shop, it was bustling. When closing, it was done without dragging it out. After dismissing all the employees, I looked at the empty shop, feeling a bit melancholic. I was only a boss for 2 months. Wandering into the kitchen, I saw lots of unsold tripe, duck intestines, yellow throat, and luncheon meat. Wasting is shameful. I messaged my parents, Dad, Mom. The place is all yours tonight. Make sure to come on time. Time seemed to accelerate today. In the middle of summer, it was only 6 p.m., yet the sky was already a deep black. Perhaps even the heavens felt sorry for my failed first venture. When my parents arrived, the spicy broth in front of me began to boil. Bubbles rose from the mix of chili and spices like pearls lifted by the heat. continuously bursting and releasing a tantalizing aroma. My mother, seeing how worn I looked, showed a pained expression and moved to hug me, but getting closer and seeing my greasy hair, she quickly stepped back, covering her nose and coughing to hide her disdain. The hot pot here really smells good. Seeing her mixed expression of disdain and sympathy, I held back my laughter and urged them to eat quickly. My dad rolled up his sleeves and started cooking the tripe in the pot, not even glancing at me. Say it, how much money do you need? True to form, just as I was about to stand, he already guessed what I was up to. I didn't hesitate and gestured in front of him. 5 million, 1 million to pay back Sarah, and the remaining 4 million as my startup fund for the next venture. Hearing this, my dad immediately spit out the tripe he was eating. I knew I shouldn't have come. Oh Dad. Just as I was about to deploy my coquettish tactics, a car horn sounded at the door. I went out to see, and it was a disaster. I was so focused on dismissing the staff that I forgot to notify the suppliers to stop the deliveries. 500 kilograms of rice, 500 kilograms of flour, 50 barrels of cooking oil. Boss, time to unload. And it didn't stop there. It was as if the suppliers had coordinated their timing, all arriving together within 15 minutes. I received 1,000 kilograms of hot pot base, 300 kilograms of potatoes, 300 kilograms of lettuce, 300 kilograms of tomatoes, 1,000 kilograms of carrots, 200 kilograms of various meatballs, 500 kilograms of pork, 500 kilograms of beef, 20 boxes of eggs, 100 lobsters, 100 king crabs. The menu's items were all delivered in massive quantities. Then another truck filled with various beverages arrived, and I was completely dumbfounded. The delivery guy expertly unloaded the goods, shouting at me, "Where's the staff? Come help unload." Looking at the boxes, I asked with a stiff face, "My shop is bankrupt. Can we return these?" The delivery guy's face immediately fell. "That's not possible. Your manager was rushing us this afternoon to confirm these orders multiple times, and now you can't just not take them." So that's how it was. When dismissing her, the manager thought I was short on her compensation, asking for an extra month's salary, but I really didn't have the extra money then and ignored her. Before she left, she threatened to make me regret this. And I didn't expect this was how she'd get back at me. Knowing I hate carrots, she still ordered 1,000 kilograms. Where does she live again? I'll deliver them all to her tomorrow. Faced with this mess, I could only look helplessly at my dad, his face grim. He signed a check and handed it to the suppliers, then went out and called back a dozen men from the street. It took them half an hour or two. After sorting the goods into their respective categories, the store was left with just me and my family. As employees had been let go and the goods were piled high like mountains, feeling utterly hopeless and knowing that I could no longer ask my father for money, I returned to the table dejectedly. Under the light, the bright red hot pot broth shimmered slightly. My mind raced with thoughts on how to deal with all these goods. While leisurely enjoying the hot pot, my mom playfully winked at my dad and said, "Honey, I won, you owe me money." Annoyed, my dad chugged a beer and reluctantly transferred 520 yuan to her. Curious, I asked, "What did you bet on?" My mom, gleefully collecting the money, turned to me and explained, "I bet your dad that you'd go bankrupt in less than 3 months." Your dad didn't believe it, claiming that his kid could last at least half a year. "See, I won. You really are my little treasure." She laughed uproariously, causing me to grimace in embarrassment. My dad, slightly annoyed, retorted, "Not a bit of business sense. I wonder who you take after. Don't look at me. It definitely isn't from my side," my mom said, waving her hands dismissively. Feeling underestimated, I was a bit angry, but at that moment, the best option was to admit defeat. "I'm sorry, Dad. I've let you down," I said, feeling ashamed. Seeing my dad's expression soften, I seized the opportunity to press my luck. "Could you possibly lend me another 500? The moment he reached for his phone, I thought I had a chance. But then he immediately blocked me. Meanwhile, my mom kept adding food to my bowl and giving my dad meaningful glances as if to tell him to ease up, comforting me with, "Don't worry, you'll make it in a few more years." What? A few more years? Suddenly, the chicken feet in my bowl didn't seem appetizing anymore. Just then, several harrowing screams echoed from outside. Startled, I dropped my chopsticks, and the cooked duck intestines fell back into the pot, irretrievable. The cries and screams mixed with the sporadic honking of cars. Was there an accident? I wondered. Walking to the door with my bowl in hand, I saw people across the street running in panic, chased by several blood-covered, oddly walking individuals. Their growls were chilling, like ferocious beasts on the prowl, ruthlessly attacking pedestrians, blood splattering everywhere. Staring in disbelief, I dropped my bowl and utensils, letting out a scream of terror. My scream drew the attention of one of the creatures, which growled and charged straight towards me, frozen in place, my mind filled with scenes from The Walking Dead. Damn, these are zombies. In a flash, a zombie reached the entrance of the hotpot restaurant, just a few steps from me. Hearing my scream, my dad quickly put down his utensils and rushed over to pull me aside. He then hurried to the glass door and managed to shut it just as the zombie lunged, narrowly saving my life. Through the glass, I saw the twisted, ferocious face of the zombie, its fangs glinting under the light. My mom came running over with a mop, shouting that she wanted to help. However, after locking eyes with a zombie, she fainted right in front of me. The zombie relentlessly attacked the glass door, attempting to squeeze through the cracks. The glass was smeared with the zombie's blood and handprints, and the stench and madness kept seeping in. My dad was desperately holding back the glass door, gasping for air as he yelled at me, "The rolling door, close the rolling door quickly." It was as if I woke from a trance, scrambling over to the bar to find the remote for the rolling door. The rolling door was outside the glass door, and with zombies outside, I wasn't sure if I could close it successfully. I nervously watched as the electric rolling door slowly descended, fearing it would break halfway down due to the zombies' assault, as I feared. When the door was about a third of the way closed, it jammed. Sweating profusely and anxious, I looked desperately at my dad. "It's jammed," swearing. My dad hesitated before opening the glass door halfway. "What are you doing, Dad?" I whispered in shock. Was he planning to sacrifice himself to the zombies? The situation didn't seem that desperate yet. Ignoring me, he fumbled for the rolling door's manual clutch, clenching his teeth. He pulled it down hard and finally managed to completely close the rolling door. Both doors together acted like a solid barrier, keeping the zombie outside. Through the door's surveillance monitor, I saw that after the rolling door was shut, the zombie gradually stopped its attack. I stared intently at the screen, my heart pounding like the beats of a war drum echoing in the empty hot pot restaurant. After loitering at the door for a while, the zombie wandered off aimlessly into the crowd like a headless fly, attacking any living person that passed by. I breathed a sigh of relief. It seemed they were only interested in visible creatures. Glancing at the screen, my heart, which had just relaxed, tensed up again. The pedestrians who had been bitten and lay dead on the ground were now standing up, their bodies broken. They staggered aimlessly, seemingly without any particular target. They've turned into zombies too?" I asked, trembling. Watching the screen, my father's expression darkened. "It seems that the living, once bitten, also turn into monsters." I took a step back in horror, looking towards the door, overcome with dread. The hot pot restaurant was quiet, filled only with the sound of mine and my dad's breathing, and the soft snoring of my mom, who had fainted. My dad quickly carried my mom to the sofa and carefully wiped her face clean with a towel. As she slowly woke from her faint, she burrowed into my dad's arms. "Honey, I just had a dream." "Mom, that wasn't a dream," I said as I handed her my phone. The internet was in an uproar. Zombie biting incidents had erupted all over the world. People didn't turn immediately after being bitten. Depending on the severity of their wounds, there was a latent period ranging from a few minutes to several hours. As a result, many bitten people had blended into the healthy population, leading to even larger-scale mutations. No one knew if the people around them had been bitten. Trust collapsed in an instant, and everyone was fearful for themselves. In just a few hours, the whole world seemed like a hell on earth. The government had issued emergency notices, urging everyone to lock their doors and windows and to avoid going out. I clutched my phone tightly, the news on the screen unsettling me. Sarah's phone had been unreachable, and I dreaded to think what might have happened to her. My dad immediately arranged finances, sending 100,000 to each of the surviving staff members to stock up on supplies. At the same time, he was constantly sending large red envelopes in the company group chat, but there were very few people grabbing them. We all knew very well that under such circumstances, order had already collapsed and money was the least useful thing. My mom was crying and murmuring, "Everything was fine this afternoon." How did it turn out like this? I wiped away my tears and asked my dad with faint calm, "What do we do now?" My dad didn't answer me. He just held my mom, staring intently at the door outside. After a long time, he finally spoke slowly. "We wait." "Wait for what?" My mom asked. "Wait for rescue," my dad replied. I was stunned for a moment, looking at my dad. Will there be a rescue? Such a question, in post-apocalyptic novels, is the most foolish. But now, we are not in a book. We are in reality. In the face of such sudden disasters, even if the state wants to conduct a rescue, it needs time. Although the government is trying its best to respond, the current situation seems to be beyond control. "Don't worry, we have a room full of food. There's nothing to fear," my dad said with rare tenderness, gently reassuring us. I then realized that we were guarding an excellent refuge. This air raid shelter has only one exit, which is now closed by 2 doors. so it's temporarily safe. The other end is a cliff, so there's no need to worry about zombies climbing up from that side, and those goods that were giving me a headache earlier have now become our confidence to survive. Come on, let me give you a tour, I said, trying to lighten the mood as I stood up to show my parents around the hot pot restaurant. The 500-meter deep air raid shelter is shaped like a lollipop. The entrance is very spacious, leading to a long, narrow corridor. The decor is themed around the Republican era, divided into areas for food preparation, dining, sightseeing, and resting, adapted to fit the location. The entrance is wide and open, roughly 200 square meters. It's been turned into a reception hall, kitchen, and a lively seafood display area. Right at the entrance is the reception hall, filled with a retro vibe, furnished with classical sofas and stools, colorful glazed lamps and simulated wooden doors and windows, under the lighting seemed to transport you to a city from the Republican era, but now, it's piled high with boxes of beverages. To the left of the reception is a large open kitchen, with its own cold storage and preparation areas. To the right, the lively seafood display area, now also filled with shrimp, crabs, and fish. Further inside is the dining area, over 200 meters in length. The tunnel is about 4 meters wide, with tables and chairs on one side, while the other wall is filled with hot pot bases and self-heating hot pots for sale. I originally intended for customers to eat and perhaps buy some to take home, but in reality, a lot got taken. Every 50 meters, there's a separate restroom with its own drainage, ensuring no congestion during peak dining times. Then, you pass through a 200-meter-long corridor. This hallway represents the historical and cultural life of the Republican city through text, pictures, and items. I've also prepared period costumes for visitors to take photos. At the end of the hallway, I've installed a large door. Behind this door is the staff rest area and my personal space. With the mindset of retiring with the hot pot restaurant, I moved almost half of my home here. The passage leads in, then diverges left and right. Here, we have a bathroom, gym, mahjong room, staff rest area, my bedroom, a dressing room, and a reading room, though small. The place is fully equipped with all life necessities, and there's definitely enough clothing for me and my mom to change into. We have enough sanitary pads to last us both for half a year. The only issue is for my dad, who doesn't have a razor or spare clothes. I had to make do with those clothes meant for taking photos. As my mom turned around, she didn't hold back on the compliments. "Baby, you're so smart, choosing such a great place. You definitely got that from me." My dad muttered under his breath, "That's not what you said just now, Mom, really, I don't believe it." Me, "All right, let me show you what a great place looks like." I led them to the entrance of the cave, as if opening the gates to a new world. I often lean against the railing here to enjoy the river scenery, beautiful both day and night, but at this moment, all I could see was shock, and all I could hear was despair. "Wow, there's water here." My mom discovered the spring at the cave's entrance. In the corner of the entrance, a mountain spring slowly emerged. The spring water was ice cold and clear. I had it tested. It's rich in minerals and excellent for drinking. During the renovation, we used local resources and diverted this water to the kitchen and bathroom for daily use. My mom happily scooped up some water to drink and smacked her lips, commenting, "This water is really good. It was used to flush the toilets before." She spat out the water in surprise, spraying my face. I grimaced and wiped my face, regretting telling the truth. After the tour, we checked the supplies. We already had a substantial stock, plus the goods that were just delivered. We had about 1,300 pounds of darn carrots, 700 pounds of rice, 600 pounds of flour, 80 barrels of cooking oil, 1,200 pounds of hot pot base, 400 pounds of potatoes, 350 pounds of Chinese lettuce, 500 pounds of tomatoes, tripe, duck intestines, yellow throat, fat intestines, pork, beef, lamb meatballs, chicken, duck, all stuffed in the cold storage, and countless lobsters, king crabs, grouper fish. My goodness, are there mushrooms and vegetables too? My mom exclaimed again. She saw the live vegetable pots displayed on the kitchen shelves. The store used to supply live vegetables, so mushrooms, bean sprouts, and bok choy were all delivered with their pots. Customers could eat and pick them fresh, which was a unique selling point. As customer traffic decreased, we stopped restocking, but some were still displayed in the kitchen under lights. We didn't know how long we'd be trapped, so we needed to take great care of these little seedlings. After inventorying the supplies, the three of us sat on the ground, catching our breath. Complete variety, fresh dishes, indeed high cost. No wonder it's losing so much money. I couldn't tell if my mom was criticizing or complimenting me. We had a fortress-like shelter, with ample food. We could last a year or more without any issues, but I still couldn't contact Sarah, and that was really bothering me. If I hadn't let her go this afternoon, it would have been nice to have her stay here. My dad frowned, pointing out a serious issue. "Everything looks fine for now, but once the power goes out, the food will spoil. Dad's concern was valid. In our sunless bunker, we relied on electricity for lighting and food storage. If power was cut off, this dark, narrow cave would become a dire place. Given the chaos outside, a power outage was likely sooner or later, though we had a diesel generator. Once the diesel ran out, we couldn't avoid the predicament of losing power. The dozens of shared power banks on the bar could only charge phones. Fortunately, the bunker was constantly at around 24 degrees Celsius. When renovating, we heavily designed the ventilation system, so even if the power went out, air circulation in the cave wouldn't be hindered. Moreover, the two doors at the entrance aren't sturdy enough. We'll need to find a way to reinforce it, not just against zombies, but against people as well. I glanced toward the door. The dried blood on the glass door was still unsettling. It was now 2 a.m., and we were all exhausted, barely able to think straight. We decided to get some sleep first and discuss our plans at length tomorrow. After washing up, I lay between my parents, insisting on not leaving them. I had originally planned to give my bed to them and sleep on the bunk bed in the staff dormitory, but then I reconsidered. What if you guys end up having another child? At 22, having a younger brother or sister wouldn't be embarrassing, but the idea of childbirth in a bunker, especially with my mom being of advanced maternal age, was just too dangerous. What are you thinking? You silly rabbit, my dad said sternly, poking my head with his finger and shoving me aside. My mom glared at me and then burst out laughing. That's not a bad idea. If only your dad hadn't had a vasectomy, otherwise, I would have opened a small account to practice by now, my dad added dryly, disliking me so much. Should I just leave? I pretended to be angry and started to sit up to leave. My dad quickly pushed me back down and fetched some bedding from the staff dormitory to lay beside the bed. In times like these, the family should stick together. He pointed to the floor bed. You sleep there. After a night of rest, we got busy early the next morning. My dad dug out the toolbox left over from a previous renovation and dismantled the hotpot table and benches. He then used nails to join the planks and make a door-sized panel. Like patching up a quilt, he stacked several thick layers and sealed the door securely. The noise we made inside attracted nearby zombies. It seemed that these creatures were very sensitive to sounds. Through the security camera, we saw zombies circling the door after hearing the noises but unable to locate the source, which made them visibly agitated. Out of curiosity, my mom wanted to take a closer look at the zombies that had frightened her, but I quickly turned off the screen. Sorry, Mom, I really don't trust your nerves. Seeing that the zombies weren't attacking the roll-up door, my dad sped up his work, nailing boldly. My mom and I together moved crates of beer, soft drinks, and mineral water to the entrance, stacking them into a thick wall. We piled it up, layer upon layer. Unless someone used a bulldozer, not even a fly could get through. Only when our stomachs began growling did we realize we hadn't eaten all day. I went to the kitchen to bring out the leftover dishes, lit the stove, and prepared for another hot pot meal. Hot pot again, my mom complained, her face sour. As a wellness enthusiast, she usually avoided hot pot, and having it 2 days in a row was too much for her. Being picky in such times seemed a bit ungrateful. If it weren't for my beloved daughter's hot pot restaurant, our family of 3 might have already become a feast for the zombies. I spoke to her sternly. Are you eating or not? If you don't eat, then I'll make it a split pot. My mom didn't hesitate and nodded vigorously. My dad, clearly starving, ignored our banter and devoured his food. After quickly finishing our meal, my dad, wiping sweat, said, "This afternoon, we need to deal with the meat. Better make it into jerky to keep it longer." My mom's eyes shone with admiration, looking at my dad like a fan. Why didn't I think of that? Honey, you really are a strategic thinker. My mom complimented my dad. She was always good at buttering people up. That's how she managed to boss my dad around for over 2 decades. After dinner, we started processing the meat, but the reality was, my dad was all theory and no practice. None of the 3 of us knew how to cook. We couldn't even cut meat properly. We clumsily followed a video, cutting the meat into sticks, then salting it and finally baking it in the oven. The oven was small, but we made do with what we could. Inspired after making beef jerky with a food blogger's video, my mom started searching for cooking tutorials on her phone. She downloaded what she could and took detailed notes on what she couldn't download. Every now and then she'd ask me, "Honey, what do you feel like eating?" "Lobsters, I want big lobsters." Seeing my mom take notes so diligently really moved me. She had never cooked in her life, but now the circumstances forced her to try her hand at cooking. I silently vowed to myself that no matter how bad her cooking turned out, I would clean my plate completely. My dad and I struggled through the afternoon and barely managed to process around 100 pounds of beef. As dinner time approached, my mom showed me a few videos she had picked out. "I don't need to watch. I'll love whatever you cook," I said sweetly. My mom stared at me with wide eyes. "What are you thinking, sweetie? These videos are for you." "For me?" I pointed at myself and then at the videos. "It's all your favorite dishes. Pick whatever you want to eat and give it a try." My mom handed me her phone, loaded with cooking videos, and went off to flatter my dad. I felt like crying. Was this all meant for me? "Do you think I can do it?" I asked, not giving up hope. "Out of the three of us, you're the one who has worked in catering. You're practically a chef, darling. Cheer up," my mom encouraged. "Look at your wife, bullying your daughter." I said to my dad, "You ran a restaurant for 2 months. You should have picked up something by now." My dad retorted, "I should have realized earlier. My parents are a team, and I was an accident." I fetched 3 big lobsters, 3 king crabs, and 2 abalones from the aquarium, planning to cook them in the simplest way possible, boiling them in water, turning on the commercial stove. I was startled by the fierce flames. My dad leaned over and said, "Be careful. Don't set the kitchen on fire. Some kids are the apple of their parents' eye. I guess I'm just a lump in their life." The tutorial said that lobsters need to be urinated before cooking, which shocked me. I read it several times. Does that mean all the lobsters I ate before were urinated? Feeling nauseous, I nearly threw up, which scared my mom. "What kind of tutorial did you find, Mom?" "Cooking lobsters involves urination. That's disgusting." I was quite puzzled too. My mom said, "Honey, whose urine do you think is best?" My dad took several deep breaths, trying to control his emotions. Then he took a lobster from my hand, poked its tail with chopsticks, and fluid flowed out. "It's this kind of urination," he explained. "Oh, I see." I suddenly realized and sincerely said, "Dad, you really know a lot." My mom chuckled and said that cooking was quite a hassle, and asked if we should just continue with hotpot. My dad ignored her suggestion, took over the task from me, and started to get busy following a video, watching my dad clumsily cooking. I couldn't help but think that I must marry someone who knows how to cook. Half an hour later, my dad served the dishes he had prepared: boiled king crab, boiled Australian lobster, and boiled abalone in clear water. Even the dishes he chose were exactly what I had in mind. This is definitely my real dad. In that moment, I really wanted to open a bottle of Maute and give a shout. Come on. As days passed, we became more skilled. We turned most of the pork and beef into jerky, hanging it at the ventilation duct. We also tried making jarred meat. Though we had no jars, we had to fry the pork and then cool it down with the oil before storing it in plastic containers. As our knife skills improved, we sliced potatoes and lettuce, and dried them in the sun near the cliff edge. We shredded cabbage and placed it in empty oil drums to make northeastern sauerkraut. We also simmered some tomatoes into sauce and stored it in empty beer bottles. "Well, we'll keep it as long as it lasts," not knowing how long we would have to endure. I also dried some carrots. Despite my dislike for them, we tried to eat perishables first. Anything that spoiled and couldn't be eaten was thrown off the cliff along with other garbage. Gradually getting used to this lifestyle, our tense nerves relaxed, and our days seemed to revolve just around eating and sleeping. My dad's cooking skills greatly improved, unlocking various cooking techniques every day. My mom and I flattered him shamelessly to keep him in a good mood. I feel like after this disaster, my dad could even start a food blog, only this food blogger's current look is a bit like a wild man. My dad hasn't shaved in nearly a month. At this rate, he could braid his beard. "Dad, I think this style really suits you," I said, leaning on the kitchen doorway watching him busy cooking. "Look at whose husband he is," my mom said, always indirectly praising herself. My dad stroked his beard and said, "I really should shave, otherwise I'll start looking like your grandfather." "With what shall we shave?" my mom asked. I raised the kitchen knife and asked, "How about this? You're trying to kill your father," my dad joked, stepping back in faint fear. Just as my mom and I were discussing the feasibility of using a kitchen knife for shaving, my dad suddenly told us to hush. "Listen, someone is tampering with the shutter door." I thought it was a zombie and hurried to check the surveillance, only to be shocked. A van was parked in front of the hotpot restaurant. Outside the shutter door were 2 men and a woman. I recognized the woman at a glance. She was Lauren, the manager of the hotpot restaurant. One of the men was trying to open the shutter door. Lauren and the other man, holding axes, adopted defensive postures and cautiously scanned their surroundings. Not far away, a decapitated zombie lay on the ground. Had they killed that zombie? I shivered and quickly called my dad over. Seeing the scene, my dad exclaimed that it was a bad time. It was noon, and from our observations over the days, zombies are sensitive to sunlight. When the sun is strong, they hide in the shade and move slowly. Many survivors had noticed this and started venturing out to look for supplies during these times. Lauren and her companions were probably hoping to take advantage of this time to get something from the hotpot restaurant. We watched nervously, observing every move of the people outside. The damn door's jammed, cursed the man trying to open it. The roller door was jammed by my dad. Not an easy task to open. Lauren handed the man an axe, urging him to use it to break in. Are you insane? That'll bring all the zombies here. The man clearly disagreed with her suggestion. It's death by starvation or death by zombies, either way. We're dead if you don't hack it open. And what if there's nothing inside after we break in? That's impossible. I ordered a lot of stuff back then just to spite Mila. As they began chopping, the metal door screeched sharply under the assault. Several zombies, attracted by the noise, started moving slowly towards them, but given the zombies' current agility, they could easily be dispatched with the axe, once they broke through the security door and the glass. All the wood and beer cans we had nailed up inside would hardly hold them back. Should we give them something to make them stop chopping? My mom suggested. No way. Without hesitation, my dad and I simultaneously refused the suggestion. In the apocalypse, human nature is more terrifying than zombies. They can kill zombies, and they can kill humans too. In times of scarcity, some people only look out for their own interests, completely disregarding the lives of others. Revealing your supplies at such times is like turning yourself into a walking target. We only had kitchen knives, no other weapons. Once exposed, it would be hard to protect ourselves. The metal shutter door was quickly chopped open, and through the gap, the nailed-down table boards could be seen. A flicker of confusion crossed Lauren's face, but it soon turned ruthless as she shouted at the camera, Mila, you're in there, aren't you? Hoarding all those supplies, lucky you. Just open the door nicely and share them. Lauren was almost certain we were inside. Seeing that I didn't respond, she kicked the shutter door impatiently. A cunning look flashed in her eyes, and she told the men to stop chopping. After a low discussion, one of the men returned to the van and reversed it to the front of the shop. This is bad. They're going to ram us. I shouted, my voice shaking, but there was no way to stop it. The van slammed into the door with a loud crash. This was followed by the sound of shattering glass. My dad, wielding a kitchen knife, shielded my mom and me, ready for a desperate fight. We braced for the van's second impact, but suddenly there was silence outside. Then, a scream echoed. Through the surveillance, I saw the man who had been standing at the door with Lauren fall to the ground, as several zombies tore into his body. The weather, which had been sunny, now turned gloomy. The commotion here had already attracted many zombies, and with the weather turning, groups of them started moving our way. The man in the van immediately turned around and sped away. Lauren followed the van for a while but ultimately couldn't escape the zombies' grasp. Unexpectedly, it was the zombies who inadvertently saved our lives. A few minutes later, she got up from the ground, only half of her face remained, and her body moved in strange ways, perhaps out of reluctance. Lauren, now a zombie, kept wandering around the entrance of the hotpot restaurant. Well, from a manager in life to a security guard in death, having narrowly escaped, we could no longer relax as before. No matter how well we barricaded the door, it could only fend off zombies. Against humans, especially those armed, we were truly helpless. The man who fled now knew we had supplies, who knew when he might return. At least he won't come tonight, my dad said. Indeed, the night is when zombies are most active. He would have to wait until tomorrow noon if he were to come again. My mom was very nervous, now fearing humans more than zombies. He might have been devoured by zombies. I comforted her, although it wasn't nice to say. In a kill or be killed situation, it was better him than us. Just then, the lights flickered and went out, plunging the room into darkness. After nearly 3 weeks, the electricity and network completely failed. My father turned on the diesel generator to power the cold storage. We huddled in the room, reluctant to turn on any lights. In the pitch-dark air raid shelter, every sense felt magnified. The darkness was like a cage, trapping us in an inescapable nightmare, filling us with a sense of oppression and anxiety. Thankfully, my mother tore strips of cotton clothing and twisted them into wicks, which she then soaked in rapeseed oil. She poured some oil into a dish, placed the cotton wick inside, and lit it, creating a simple oil lamp. We sat around the lamp, watching the flames dance and listening to the sound of the fire. It helped us momentarily forget the terror and unease outside, reminding us that we were still alive and there was still hope. Mom, you're really something, I said as the soft glow of the flame illuminated my mother's proud expression. Of course. Don't you know who she married? My dad joked. Boasting like my mom. Help, I'm not used to this kind of dad. The three of us fell asleep amidst fear and anxiety. In the middle of the night, I suddenly heard rustling noises at the entrance of the shelter. My heart raced, nearly leaping to my throat. I cautiously peered down. By the faint moonlight, I saw a figure struggling to climb up. Could it be Lauren and her group? I had always thought this cliff was too steep for zombies to climb, making it safe enough. I never expected a person to be climbing it. Fortunately, there was only one person, and given the easily defensible position, they shouldn't be tough to handle. Holding a long stick, and my dad armed with a kitchen knife, we quietly crouched on either side of the entrance. We prepared to strike a fatal blow as soon as the person climbed up. My nerves were tense, the stick in my hand damp with sweat. Moments later, the figure's head appeared. My dad and I exchanged glances. We quickly moved towards it, raising the stick to push him down. Mila, are you asleep? Help me up, Mila. I froze, the stick hanging in midair. Why did the voice sound so familiar? Sarah. It was Sarah's voice. My dad and I were stunned. Sarah, is that you? It's me. Thank God you're not asleep. Help me up. Sarah's voice was weak. My dad and I quickly dropped what we were holding and grabbed Sarah's arms, pulling her up. Sarah collapsed on me, exhausted from the climb. I hugged Sarah, crying and laughing, thinking I'd never see her again. But you really stink. After the joy of reunion, I was overwhelmed by the smell emanating from Sarah. She smelled like a spoiled bun. Since the zombie outbreak, I haven't had a bath. How could I not stink? Sarah sniffed her arm and couldn't help but grimace. Her eyes caught the kitchen knife on the ground and she asked exaggeratedly, "Were you guys really planning to chop me?" My mom brought Sarah some hot water, her hands trembling as she took small sips. "It's a good thing you made a sound, otherwise we really would have pushed you down." Thinking about it, I felt a chill. Had we moved a little faster, she might have fallen and been smashed to pieces. How did you manage to climb up here? It's so dangerous. Can you translate these paragraphs into English? Make sure the translation isn't too literal, my mom asked. She usually didn't dare look down, let alone imagine how to climb up from below. Sarah pouted, asking in a distressed tone, "Is there anything to eat? I'm starving." My parents hurriedly jogged to the kitchen to prepare some food for Sarah. I supported her as we walked over, feeling her eagerness mixed with a sense of helplessness. The few hundred meters to the dining area felt even longer to her than the recent climb up the cliff. Reaching the dining area, she grabbed a self-heating hot pot and was about to dig in. I quickly stopped her. "Hold on, just hold on a bit." The delicious hot pot was served by my dad, and Sarah's tears uncontrollably started to roll down her cheeks. "And there's king crab too. Oh my, this is just too much." Sarah didn't hold back, grabbing the chopsticks and starting to devour the food hungrily. After having her fill, she began to talk about her miserable experiences over the past few days. When the zombie outbreak happened, she was at a convenience store with her boyfriend, planning to buy some snacks. In the ensuing chaos, her boyfriend abandoned her and ran away, leaving her trapped in the convenience store for days. Hearing this, I was furious. I always said that guy was no good. Look on the bright side, he might have been torn apart by zombies by now. Sarah said nonchalantly, "I thought you were dead because you didn't reply to my messages," I said, tears swirling in my eyes. "I wanted to reply as soon as I saw your message, but my phone got smashed before I could send it, the day before yesterday." When the convenience store was looted empty, she was so hungry she took a risk to come find me. "You're too bold. Climbing up like that was so dangerous." My mom looked at Sarah, her face gaunt and her hands full of scars, her eyes full of sorrow. It's a miracle she wasn't eaten by zombies or fell to her death on her way here. What could I do? There were so many security guards patrolling your entrance. Sarah pointed towards the door. "You mean there are a lot of zombies at the entrance?" I asked. With the power and internet down, we couldn't see the situation at the entrance, and I thought it was just Lauren, one of the zombies, hanging around. Exactly, a bunch of male zombies were following a female zombie around. I was genuinely impressed. Lauren really was a manager through and through, even as a zombie. Her leadership skills stood out. "It looks like we're safe for now," my dad said. I knew what he meant. Even if robbers came, the zombies at the door would deter them. With Sarah joining us, our mahjong games were finally no longer short of one player. The person who lost the most was in charge of cooking and washing dishes. Sarah and I stood no chance against my dad, always losing badly. He would chide me for not using my brain while playing, but he would still prepare the meal. Given the scarcity of food, he didn't dare to really make us starve. Sometimes Sarah couldn't help but feel sad. I knew she was missing her parents. When the outbreak occurred, her parents were abroad, and it was unknown whether they were still alive. Before we knew it, 3 months had passed since the zombie outbreak began. As November approached, the weather gradually cooled down. The diesel generator had long been silent, and the gas cylinders in the kitchen were also exhausted. Although the cave's constant temperature eliminated the need for heating, guarding our supplies without fuel to cook made our moods quite heavy. Technically, the furniture in the store could be dismantled for firewood, but we were worried that the smoke from a fire might attract unwanted attention, so we only dared to make a small fire at night to cook, and during the day, we ate self-heating hot pots. If we didn't want to eat those, we'd just wait and cook a meal at night. We didn't lack water. Reluctant to waste firewood on heating water, we hadn't bathed in a long time. The spring water by the cave entrance was too icy, and as the weather cooled, even a brief touch was enough to make us shiver. Fortunately, we didn't sweat much, so we weren't too smelly. My mom, always particular about cleanliness, really struggled with how unkempt we had become, taking advantage of the residual heat from the evening's cooking fire. She managed to warm some lukewarm water for a bath. She even washed her hair. A sense of foreboding rose in me. Sure enough, my mom developed a fever in the middle of the night. The hotpot restaurant had everything except medicine. My dad kept trying to cool her down with a damp towel all night, but it barely helped. I prayed that her immune system would pull her through, but the high fever persisted, and her consciousness began to blur. We were frantic with worry. It's all my fault, I lamented. I had prepared everything but had neglected to bring common medications. Don't say that. We're not gods. We can't foresee everything. Sarah consoled me. Should I climb down the cliff to get some medicine? I proposed, but my dad immediately vetoed the idea. It was a fluke that Sarah made it up here, he said. We don't have the proper equipment to risk it, he added. After speaking, my dad looked silently at the cave entrance, frowning. I knew there was a pharmacy directly opposite the hotpot restaurant. Only a road lay between us, less than 100 meters from the main entrance, the quickest way to get medicine, but outside weren't just a few zombies. Facing them was no simpler than confronting a sheer cliff. What were our chances if we went out? I'll figure something out, my dad said, starting to prepare weapons. He sharpened a kitchen knife until it was sufficiently lethal and then secured it to a stick with some rope to extend its reach. He swung it a few times in front of us. It seemed effective. Then he made another one and handed it to me. Try this, he continued without pause, moving beer crates to block the door. After moving the crates, he began to dismantle some wooden planks, only removing enough to allow one person to fit through. The glass door had already been shattered by Lauren and her group, so we only needed to lift the roll-up door slightly to crawl under. However, the roll-up door had been so battered that my dad struggled to open even a small gap. Fortunately, the zombies, lacking intelligence, only knew to ram the door without checking underneath, but once someone crawled out, they wouldn't last 3 seconds. As my dad prepared, he instructed me, after I go out, you and Sarah bring over the boxes to block the gap. If I'm not back in 2 hours, nail the entrance shut. I clung tightly to my dad's hand, not letting him go. He looked at me for a long while, then pulled away and caressed my head, his voice choked with emotion. Listen to me, take care of your mom and survive until help arrives. I bit my lip hard, tears silently streaming down my face. My dad's venture outside was fraught with danger, but my mom's situation was urgent. Watching him, I saw him take a piece of beef that had rotted due to the power outage. He lay down at the door and threw the meat outside with all his might. The zombies, drawn by the smell, swarmed towards it, and my dad seized the moment to slip out. I looked at Sarah. She understood what I was planning to do, and although she didn't agree, she nodded at me. Take this. Sarah handed me the kitchen knife my dad had given me. I also grabbed a few pieces of rotten meat, in a desperate attempt to distract the zombies. My dad lay flat, throwing meat out the door crack. However, lacking strength, I couldn't throw it far enough. The zombies initially chasing him were diverted by the meat momentarily. As I stealthily made my way out, I sprinted towards where my dad had gone. The biting cold wind felt as if I was inhaling icy blades. The zombies, realizing a living person was nearby, began to chase after me. Despite it being daytime, with the overcast sky dimming the sunlight, the zombies remained agile. 5 zombies were tailing me, including Lauren and 4 others, all men. Lauren, even as a zombie, hadn't forgotten our old disputes and persistently chased me. I dashed towards the pharmacy, with the zombies closely on my heels. Realizing I might be dragging the zombies towards my dad, I quickly altered my strategy and turned back, leading the zombies away. I ran circles, trying my hardest to buy time for my dad. He reached the pharmacy entrance and turned just in time to see me being chased, his face filled with horror. I yelled to him, Dad, don't worry about me, just go get the medicine. But without hesitation, he rushed over and swung his homemade long-handled cleaver at one of the zombies, severing its decaying arm. The creature, seemingly unfazed, lunged at him with a grotesque snarl. Remembering a previously decapitated zombie, I shouted, chop off its head. Realizing this, my dad raised his cleaver and cleanly decapitated the zombie, which immediately fell. That's when I remembered I had a knife too. Why run when I can fight, I thought, but my knife skills were poor. I swung wildly at the air, merely injuring another zombie without killing it. Suddenly, I smelled a foul stench behind me. Turning slightly, I saw zombie Lauren about to bite my shoulder. Just my luck, falling into her hands, I thought, just as her mouth touched my shoulder. My dad kicked her down and decisively finished her off with another strike. He grabbed me, and we continued running towards the pharmacy, admonishing me as we ran. "Are you trying to get yourself killed? How would I explain this to your mom?" This silenced him too. Inside the pharmacy, chaos reigned, and I didn't know where to find the necessary medicine. After dealing with 2 more zombies using our newfound combat experience, my dad packed whatever he could into his backpack. "Can't be choosy now. Just grab everything." Many zombies, attracted by our scent, were slowly converging on us. We had to leave quickly, or risk being trapped and either devoured or starved to death. Reluctantly, I searched the shelves near the entrance and finally found some anti-inflammatory and fever-reducing medications. When we left the pharmacy, the number of zombies on the street had tripled. It wasn't certain we could fight our way through them all. Exchanging a glance with my dad, we both charged out together. As the zombies, having not seen fresh prey in a while, excitedly converged towards us, roaring. As we sprinted and fought, the mere 100 meters felt as marathon-like in its length. As we neared the cave entrance, Sarah threw a bag of foul meat out and yelled to me from inside, "Mila, use this to lure them away." My dad picked up the meat and hurled it at the zombies. He threw bits in all directions, buying us a brief moment to escape. It wasn't until we were all safely back inside the store and had pulled down the roller door, blocking the entrance, that my legs gave way and I collapsed to the floor. Without pausing, my dad rushed to my mom with the medicine. Sarah tried to help me up, but I gestured for her to let me lie down a bit longer. It felt good to just lie there. After resting for a while, Sarah and I walked to the room, unsure if the medicine had helped Mom. Her forehead still felt hot. Seeing my worry, Sarah couldn't help but laugh and cry. "It's not a miracle cure. These things take time. Where's Dad?" It was then I realized I hadn't seen him since he went to give my mom the medicine. He must have been exhausted and gone to rest somewhere. I was about to fetch some cool spring water to use as a cold compress for my mom when I saw my dad, one leg over the railing, looking like he was about to jump. "Dad, what are you doing?" I cried out. "Stay back." He panicked a bit seeing me suddenly. Ignoring his plea, I ran over and grabbed his other leg, holding on tightly. "Are you possessed? We just escaped death. Why climb so high, sweetheart? Let go." Taking deep breaths, my dad tried to calm his voice and told me he had been bitten by a zombie. In the chaos of saving me, when he kicked the zombie Lauren, it managed to bite his calf. He hadn't noticed at the time, but soon after he felt a severe burning sensation. The wound had started to rot, and it wouldn't be long before the virus spread throughout his body, turning him into a zombie. "It's all my fault. I shouldn't have caused more trouble." I wept bitterly, blaming myself for my dad's fate. "How can you blame yourself? If it weren't for your help, I might not have gotten the medicine. I don't care. Even if you turn into a zombie, you're still my dad. If it comes to it, we'll all become zombies together. If you jump, I'll jump too." Hearing the commotion, Sarah quickly came over and helped me pull my dad down. He was already weak from the exertion and the spreading virus. I rolled up his trouser leg and saw the frighteningly hot bite. On a desperate impulse, I submerged his calf in the cold, bone-chilling spring water of the little pond. The cool water brought down the temperature of the wound. My dad's brows relaxed, and he fell asleep. Sarah and I carried him to the staff dormitory and locked him in. Just in case he turned into a zombie, I decided to keep him there. After all, we still had plenty of foul meat. Maybe there was hope for a vaccine. As night turned into day, my mom's fever finally broke. Her first question upon waking was, "Where's your dad?" I didn't have the heart to tell her that by now, Dad might already be a zombie, but Dad had always been strong-willed. Has silence become eerie? Sarah's screams echoed from the doorway, signaling trouble. I rushed out immediately. I found Sarah crouched on the ground, visibly terrified. My father was standing in front of her, slightly bent over, reaching out his hand towards her. "Dad, don't bite her," I yelled instinctively. "Those zombies can't understand human speech." "My dad, I haven't turned into a zombie." "What?" Sarah and I exclaimed in unison. "What are you talking about?" asked my mom, weakly leaning on the door, her face full of confusion. I reluctantly explained everything that had happened over the past 2 days. My mom broke down in tears, hugging my dad, overwhelmed with regret. "Husband, if you turn into a zombie, bite me first. It's all my fault for insisting on taking that bath. It seems I might not turn into a zombie after all," my dad said as he rolled up his trouser leg. The area that was festering just yesterday had now scabbed over. "What's going on?" We looked at each other, bewildered. Could it be that my dad is the chosen one, with anti-mutation genes in his body? "I think it might be due to the water," my dad theorized. We all turned to look at the spring, somewhat incredulously. "The water? This water, it's impossible for me to carry anti-mutation genes. Before touching the water, my leg was festering. Could it be that some mineral in the water has the power to counteract the zombie virus? It sounded like a fairy tale. I'd rather believe that my dad's body was extraordinary. What's the harm in trying? Sarah suggested. No sooner said than done. We filled dozens of plastic bags with water. We reopened the area we had sealed off yesterday. I lay on the ground, throwing rotten meat outside to attract the zombies. When the zombies came close, I hurled the water bombs at them, but the zombies showed no reaction after being hit. I threw another, still no response. It seems it's not the water. Disheartened, I sat down on the ground. Sarah, unconvinced, also lay down to throw the water bags. Just throw them, it's useless, I said, letting her take my place to have her fill of throwing. Ah, look, the zombies are falling down. Sarah was ecstatic, her voice trembling with excitement. I was invigorated and quickly lay down to look. My mood instantly brightened. Indeed, the zombies that had just been hit with a few bags of water were now lying motionless on the ground. We continued to throw meat outside to attract zombies, hitting each one with several bags of water. Before long, 4 or 5 zombies lay scattered by the door. Next, we waited to see if the zombies on the ground would rise again. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days passed. The zombies at the door did not get up again. Their rotting bodies emitted a strong stench in the sunlight. The water really worked. We had succeeded, but how could we spread the news so that the government would know? After some discussion, we decided to open the cave door. We folded countless notes into paper airplanes and sent them flying out. Please spread the word. D. Road No. 108. Cave Hotpot has a special cure for the zombie virus. 3 days later, people in camouflage knocked on the rolling door. That day, sprinkler trucks began spraying spring water. A month later, my city was the first to completely eliminate all zombies. Half a year later, all the zombies in the country had been cleared. Later, my hotpot restaurant became popular again. This time, it truly became a viral hotpot spot, a new landmark in the city. After finishing their meal, diners would even take a bucket of spring water home. They say drinking a cup daily strengthens the body and wards off all diseases. Finally, it was my turn to enjoy this incredible fortune.